Afrobeats is no longer just a sound. It's a movement that shaped cities, inspired cultures, and connected communities across continents. But when you trace the global rise of this genre, two cities stand out as twin pillars of influence: London and Toronto. Both cities sit thousands of miles apart, yet their stories are intertwined, linked by migration, diaspora, and the unstoppable rhythm of African creativity. Toronto and London share something powerful: diversity. They're both home to massive African and Caribbean populations, and over the last 2 decades, they've become cultural melting pots where music from Lagos, Accra, and Kingston meets hip-hop, grime, R&B, and dancehall. The result? A cross-Atlantic sound that gave birth to some of the most iconic Afrobeats moments in history. Let's take it back. In the early 2010s, London was already becoming the unofficial capital of Afrobeats outside Africa. Artists like Fuse, ODG, Mr. Silva, and Moalogo were bringing Ghanaian and Nigerian sounds to mainstream radio. Around the same time, Toronto's young African crowd was finding its own rhythm through student parties, small DJ sets, and cultural events hosted by the diaspora community. In both places, the music was more than entertainment. It was identity. For African kids growing up abroad, Afrobeats became a reminder of home. The lyrics, the drums, the fashion, even the dances, everything carried pieces of the motherland. While London's scene exploded through artists and labels, Toronto's came alive through DJs and parties. London had acts like Wizkid collaborating with Skepta, and later, Burna Boy teaming up with UK producers. Toronto had the rise of event curators, DJs, and promoters, people like AJ Styles, DJ Magic Flows, and Havel, who turned nightclubs and student halls into cultural landmarks. London had the commercial breakthrough, Afrobeats songs topping charts and festivals featuring African artists. Toronto had the grassroots energy, people creating their own spaces when the mainstream didn't yet recognize the culture. And that difference became the reason both cities complemented each other so well. What's fascinating is how these two cities began influencing each other without even realizing it. The same way UK Afrobeats evolved into Afro swing, blending grime, R&B, and dancehall, Toronto artists started mixing Afrobeats with melodic hip-hop and smooth R&B tones. You could hear the London flavor in Toronto's production, and you could hear the Toronto soul in London's beats. Social media bridged the gap. Artists from both sides began collaborating. Producers in Toronto sending beats to singers in the UK, DJs sharing mixes online, influencers promoting cross-city events. Suddenly, a track could blow up in both London and Toronto on the same weekend. One thing both cities share deeply is the Caribbean influence. Toronto's long-standing Caribbean population, thanks to decades of migration, built a foundation of soca, reggae, and dancehall in the clubs. London, with its Jamaican and Trinidadian communities, mirrored that perfectly. When Afrobeats started gaining traction, it felt like a natural extension of what was already there. The African and Caribbean connection created a shared energy, one that made Afrobeats impossible to ignore. Now, fast forward to the mid-2010s. Wizkid drops Come Closer with Drake, a Nigerian and a Toronto superstar connecting through Afrobeats. The song wasn't just a hit, it was a global moment. Drake had already been experimenting with dancehall and Afro-Caribbean rhythms, but this collaboration made it official. Toronto was part of the Afrobeats map. At the same time, London was producing stars like J Hus, whose music perfectly balanced grime with African rhythms. Then came Burna Boy's UK domination, selling out arenas, performing at the Brits, and inspiring the next generation of African and British artists alike. But while London had the stage, Toronto had the vibe. Events like day parties, brunches, and student events became the beating heart of Afrobeats in Canada. DJs brought Lagos energy to Toronto dance floors. And in many ways, Toronto became a reflection of London's earlier years, a city discovering how to celebrate its African roots in public, proudly and unapologetically. When you walk into an Afrobeats night in either city today, the similarities are almost uncanny. The fashion is bold: Ankara prints, do-rags, silk shirts, designer sneakers. The music is familiar, from Rema to Tiwa Savage, Burna Boy to Thames. The crowd is diverse: Africans, Caribbeans, Canadians, Brits, and everyone in between. And the energy? Pure unity. Both cities have something else in common. They serve as gateways for African artists into the Western market. Toronto connects artists to North America. London connects them to Europe. Many Afrobeats artists plan their tours with those two cities locked in from the start. If you can move the crowd in London and Toronto, you can move the world. What's also interesting is how the business of Afrobeats evolved differently in both places. London saw the rise of record labels, brand partnerships, and massive concerts. Toronto saw independent artists, local promoters, and DJs building a movement from the ground up. Yet somehow, they've met in the middle. Both cities now have established event brands, global recognition, and international collaborations. And now, as Afrobeats continues to dominate globally, you can feel both London and Toronto influencing the next phase, the fusion era. Amapiano from South Africa has blended in, Afro House is creeping into DJ sets, and Toronto producers are bringing in trap and soul influences. Meanwhile, London artists are experimenting with drill and Afro fusion. It's not competition, it's evolution. Toronto artists like AJ Styles, Teen, and others are starting to make names for themselves just like London Act did years ago. And with streaming platforms breaking down borders, the next hit song could easily come from either side of the Atlantic. At its core, what ties London and Toronto together is the diaspora story. Both cities represent young Africans redefining identity, not through politics or protest, but through rhythm, dance, and community. The beats may have come from Africa, but the culture has been nurtured, reshaped, and amplified through these global cities. So the next time you hear an Afrobeat song at a party in Toronto or London, remember, it's not just a track playing. It's history in motion. It's years of migration, innovation, and passion wrapped into one sound. A sound that connects continents and cultures, uniting millions who call different places home but dance to the same rhythm. Afrobeats has no borders anymore, and cities like London and Toronto made sure of that. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite Afrobeats memory in either city, and don't forget to subscribe. There's plenty more coming your way, more stories, more culture, and more rhythm. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep the energy alive and keep the music playing.